Welcome to the CAD Office Training Guide series for FDOTConnect. I'm Todd Holt, CAD Applications Training Coordinator. Today I will be going through the Roadway Design 2D Basics Guide. In this series of videos, I will take you step by step through each exercise from the guide. Today we'll start with Chapter 2, Part 2 of the guide. This will be a continuation of the exercises starting at exercise 2.9 to use civil cell technology to place curb and sidewalk around the radii of the 2D planimetrics files that we were just in part 1, the DSGNRD file. Topics covered: civil cell technology, create a custom civil cell, place left turn with traffic separator, place right turn island, baseline 98 intersection crosswalk lines, create a baseline 98 side road turnouts, place baseline 98 shoulders, and work on the friendship intersection. Let's begin. So beginning where we left off, we just placed our curve radii and adjusted that. We're now going to place civil cells in exercise 2.9. So we're in the model. We're going to switch to the model detailing tab like we did before. Civil cells group and place civil cell. We'll go to the civil cell dialog and click on the ellipses. We'll go into the FDOT curb lines and endings, DGN line. We want the curb line type F civil cell with the reference and the civil cell that what's going to get placed. Once we have that, we'll select the radius of the 110 foot that we placed earlier for edge of pavement. That's our first locate reference. Check our direction. We want it to go north of the edge of pavement, so we'll change our direction. We don't have any alternatives, so we'll right click to skip and then left click to place. We've placed two curb lines. So the next step is to go back into our civil cell library by the ellipses and the dialog. We'll go back into the FDOT 2D curb lines and endings DGN line. This time we want the sidewalk lines. And notice we have a front sidewalk and back sidewalk off our reference. Our reference this time will be our back face of curb. So we'll click OK. Locate the reference back curb. That will be the back of curb. Looks like the direction is good, so we'll do a right click to skip the alternatives because we don't have any, and then left click to accept to place the civil cell. So we just have the two civil cells placed. Now we need to do some verification. So I'll hit escape to get out. So the first verification that we want to do is the front sidewalk to see how far it is away. That is -2. Let's roll up to or scroll up to our other civil cell that we placed, the 306-5 exhibit, and verify the number of spacing on that, -2, so that's good. And then we'll check our back of sidewalk spacing, which I believe we set that to -5. So let's verify that that's set to -5. That's good. So once we verified that, the next step is to trim. But before we trim, we're going to create a custom civil cell. So we're going to go to exercise 2.10 and create a custom civil cell to be able to place, and then we'll do the trim after that. So what we want to do, the first step to create a custom civil cell is we want to create a custom civil cell out of the curb lines and the back of sidewalk, front of sidewalk, and back of sidewalk lines that we just placed. So to do that, we're going to go up to the Model Detailing tab, the Drop Civil Cell. We want to drop the civil cell. So first we're going to locate the sidewalk civil cell that we placed and drop that, and then come back up to the civil cells group and drop civil cell and drop the curb lines that we've. So now that we've dropped those, they'll still have the intelligence, but they're not a civil cell. The next step is to create civil cell. So our civil cell name is going to be custom curb and sidewalk. Tab out of that. Our reference name, we can name that to EOPA. And then tab. So now it's working through the properties of the dialog. So we'll do a left click for the name. Now it's asking for the reference element to locate. That's going to be our edge of pavement. So once we select that, you'll notice that the curb lines, front and back, plus your sidewalk lines, front and back, highlight. And the next step is locate next reference element. We don't have one, so we can reset to complete. That's a right click. We don't have any optional references, so we're going to reset again by right clicking, and then left click to accept the civil cell. So we've just created a custom civil cell for sidewalks, our sidewalk lines, and our curb lines. So let's place that over on this other side. To do that, we'll go up to the place civil cell. We'll go back to the ellipses. This time it won't be in a DGN live, but it's going to be in the active DGN file that we're in. So if we click the plus, we'll see the civil cells that we've placed. So we've placed a 306-5 exhibit, a right turn lane, and a right turn lane 1. So that will be our first right turn lane and the right turn lane 1. And we'll notice we have a custom curb sidewalk. That's the one that we just built. And if we click on that one, you'll see our reference line in red, plus our curb lines. If we zoom in, and our 2 sidewalk lines. So let's select the custom curved sidewalk and click OK. It's now asking us to locate the reference element. It's going to be our edge of pavement. In this case, how this line was drawn is different than how the civil cell was built. So we need to change the direction of the reference. So to do that, we'll select the reference and left click to change the direction of the line to get those to place correct. To skip the references and then left click to place. So we can do that down on these 2 lines down here. So locate the reference. This one needs to change direction too, so I'll locate the reference again, track the arrow by my cursor, and left click to flip the lines. And then right click because there's no alternatives, and then left click to place again. So we've created a custom civil cell and we've placed it. That was exercise 2.10. So I placed it on the wrong side or from the guide. I actually want to place our custom civil cell that we just built, the custom curved sidewalk, on this side over here. So I'll select the reference, and again I will rotate or change the direction of the reference, not rotate it. I'm changing it so it's mirroring about the center line, and then right click and left click to accept. If we want to remove a custom civil cell or a civil cell, we can go to our Explorer. So right now we have one custom, our original custom civil cell, one that we placed, so that's going to be custom curb sidewalk 1. The one that we placed in the wrong edge of pavement line is going to be custom curb sidewalk 2. And then custom curb sidewalk 3 is the one that we want to keep. To delete one, we can go to our Explorer under the primary group. We can go to our Open Roads Model tab, click on the DSGN-RD file that we're in, default, expand that out, go to our civil cells, and also in here you'll have all the civil cells that you place. So we just can verify the name. So if we click on them, they should highlight. So we'll do our there's our custom curved sidewalk. There's the 1, there's the 2, that's the one that we need to delete. And so to delete it, we will select the custom curved sidewalk, verify that it highlights, and then we can right click and delete. So we can remove that custom sidewalk 3 that we placed incorrect. So from the previous exercise in 2.9, it told us to trim. We can do that now, but I wanted to place the civil cells before we trim them on that. So to trim, they use the regular MicroStation Open Roads technology trim tool. If you don't know where those are, you can use your Home tab. So I'm going to pin that back. Home tab or Drawing tab. I know the trim tools, they're on the drawing, but if I don't know where they are, if I didn't know that, I knew the name. We go back to the FDOT tab. If I know the name of a tool, type it in the search. So I need trim tools. So it's going to tell me the trim multiple, trim intersection. I want the trim intersection or trim to element. It'll tell me the workflow, tab, and group that it's located in. So the trim to element is in the Open Roads modeling workflow, the drawing tab, and the modify group. But it can also be found on the drawing workflow, the home tab, and modify. So that's a quick way to see if you just hover over the tool name to see where it lives in the ribbon. So I'm just going to click on the name. I'm in the tool, so I'm going to go ahead and start trimming my sidewalk lines to that line. So that's just your normal microstation or open roads tool of trim. And then the curb to the curb back, and curb face to curb face. Do the same thing over on this side. We'll do sidewalk to the back of sidewalk, front sidewalk to front sidewalk, and back of curb to the back of curb, curb face to curb face. We can take our edge of pavement to the edge of pavement on the radius, so that looks more like an intersection. Now, if this moves or this radius gets bigger or smaller, since it's intelligent, we're building design intent, it's going to remember the trims or the intervals that we created. So say we go from a 60 to a 45-foot curb radius. It will remember the intervals that these lines are trimmed to the other lines of the sidewalk of the civil cell. So let's set that back to 60, or we can go bigger too. So we've created intervals, we created design intent and intelligence on our design. So all we have to do is change one. So if our alignment changes or shift, since all our civil cells or this intersection is built off of this center line or this center line, it has a parent-child relationship to the construction line, which the construction line has a parent-child relationship to the center line. That's the design intent. So the trim tools of Open Roads Designer can work with any civil cell or any intelligent, the Open Roads technology tools of the horizontal or vertical. And it'll create an interval on the element that you trim to or trim from. Exercise 2.11, place left turn with traffic separator. So this will be another civil cell. So we're going to put a left turn traffic separator coming from the southbound State Road 61 to turn east on the US 98, the baseline. So we're going to go back up to our model detailing, our place civil cells, go back to our ellipses of our place civil cell dialog to pick the civil cell that will be in the FDOT 2D intersection and details. This time we want a left turn with traffic separator. Once we have that placed by our cursor, it's locate the reference element side road center line. That will be the US 98 baseline, and then it's the second reference, locate reference element left median edge of pavement. So that will be our left median edge of pavement. And if you notice, this one comes in incorrectly, so how these lines were drawn were not the same way that the civil cell was drawn. That's an easy fix. Like we did before, we just need to change direction of the lines of the reference. So we'll select the reference, the edge of pavement, and left click. That'll put that correctly. So now that's looking more like a traffic separator on a median. And then we need to turn our other reference of the baseline for our turning radius to be correctly placed off of that. So I'll change that direction also. So that changed the construction line for the turning radius and also moved up our traffic separator to look correct. So once we have that set, we'll do a right click to reset because we don't have any alternate, and then left click to place that civil cell. I'm going to escape to get out of the tool, and now we have a little cleanup and modification that we need to do. So on the civil cell, the green construction line is the turning, and then here is our traffic separator. So in the next couple exercises, we're going to modify a couple different things. We're going to go back to our trim tools and then zoom up. So we need to trim this group of lines. So these edge of pavement, curb back, curb face to match these. And then this edge of pavement, these two curb lines to match this construction line to look more like a median. So again, if we didn't know where they were, we could come up to the search ribbon, or you can click the drop down if it's a recently used tool that you just keyed in, and we can do the trim. But this is telling me it's on the Open Roads Modeling workflow, the drawing tab, and modify group. So I'm going to go to the Open Roads Modeling Workflow, my drawing tab. Here's my modify group. There's my trim tools. So instead of trim to element, I'm going to use the trim to intersection. This allows me to pick both lines that I want to trim. So I want to trim this edge of pavement to this edge of pavement, my curb back to curb back, and my curb face to my other curb face. So there's another trim tool that we can use on civil cells or open roads technology on the geometry tool. So there's the trim to intersection. I'm going to go back to the trim to element, and I'm going to trim this edge of pavement to the construction line, my curb face to the construction line, and also the curb back to the construction. The next step, step 6 and 7, we're going to change the turning radius from 100 feet to 75 feet. And then step 7, we're going to place the storage length, or change the storage length from 200 to 300. To do that, I'm going to hit escape to go back to my element selection tool, or click on element selection. I'll zoom out. I'm going to change my turning radius. So I'm going to click on that from 100 to 75. So I'll just key that in and then enter. And then the storage length is controlled by this green construction line, and that's from 200 to 3. And again, it remembered the trims as intervals, so that all goes back, and that's that design intent and intelligence built into using the Open Roads technology tools. There's one more change that we need to do. For the turning radius, we want to adjust this offset. So instead of -1 or 1 foot off of the US98 baseline, we want it to be -4, so 4 feet off. So we'll do that. So our turning radius will come down and go into there. So in this exercise, we've placed the traffic separator. We use the trim to intersection tool, and also the trim to element tool to create design intelligence and place a civil cell. On to exercise 2.12. So in exercise 2.12, we need to place another civil cell, the right turn island. This one can be a little tricky, so we'll kind of walk through it maybe once or twice when we place this civil cell. The first thing that we're going to do is we'll go to the Model Detailing tab, the Place Civil Cell, and see where this right turn island lives, what DGN lib it's in. Looks like it's in the FDOT2D intersection details. So let's go ahead into that one, the FDOT intersection details.dgn lib, and then right turn island. Again, we have 2 references, so we have 1 and 2. Click OK. Now in this one, we may have to go in and turn off an element or turn on an element. So here's our first reference, and you'll notice it's remembering the parent information, or the parent element. Since it was trimmed to this, it's still remembering that as we see the ghost there. So that is our first element. Our second is going to be this edge of pavement, and it placed it incorrectly, so I might have grabbed the wrong references. So let me see if I can fix it by just changing it. No, I can't. So let me right click twice to reset the tool. So the first tool that I want to grab, or the first line, is going to be this edge of pavement coming off the 98. That's my first reference. So I'll select that. My second reference will be the edge of pavement coming off of the State Road 61 edge of pavement on this right, and select that. So that gets their place better. We don't have to do any adjustments. So I'm going to do right click to reset, and then left click to place. So it's just place that civil cell. I'm going to go ahead and escape to get out of the tool. So the next steps are going through and making adjustments to the civil cell to justify it out. So adjusting the parameters, at step 1, we're going to change the right turn island parameters. We're going to change the construction line radius from 110 or 110 feet to 126. So we'll select our construction line radius. We want to change this from 110 feet to 126. So I'll key that in and then enter. That will adjust it. You'll notice that it may break over here. That's temporary. That's okay. We'll do some more fixing and fix that. So the next step, step 2, is we're going to adjust our radius. Looks like it's from -4 feet. We want that to be -18. So we'll key that in, -18, and then enter. Data point. You'll see that it fixed itself, since just simply by adjusting some of the constraints or the references that it was built off. We're going to verify also on this end that we changed the one end to 18. This is 16, so that's good. Verify that this is 16. We changed this offset from -4 to -18. And now we need to select this element here, or this construction line, as a reference, and we're going to change that from 1 foot to -16. So let me zoom in and select it. So it's moving from 1 foot to -16. So I'll key that in, enter. So now it's starting to look like another intersection or a right turn island. Our next step is to grab this construction line here, and we'll verify that that is -16 off the edge of pavement. That looks correct. We've changed this to be -16 and verified that this is -16 off. Our next step is to grab this element, and we'll notice the next step is to adjust this line here of the civil cell. So I'll select it, and you'll notice when I select it, our read only, because if I try and select that, color was set to red. So these are going to be read only. So what we'll need to do is select it and then right click on this element to make those act. And we want to change this from -5 to -2, but we don't see the center number in there. So what we'll have to do is maybe adjust this a couple of different times. So we'll select this or key in -2 and enter. We'll notice that comes down, and then we'll come back over to this side, which is still stuck at -5. So it was two variables of the same number, but it was just constrained a different way. So we'll key in -2 for this side. And once we do that, we'll notice that we get all of them all. So again, if they are read-only, which they went back to that after I deselect it and reselect, I'll need to select it and then right-click, and then I can adjust the parameters of the civil cell or on that line. So I've changed that one from -5 to -2 a couple different ways. The next step is to come up and change this distance, or no, this distance, which is read only again. So we'll have to adjust that from 1 to 6 feet. So I'll select it. It's read only. I can't select any of the parameters. So I'll have to select it and then right click. You may have to do a couple times. This one might be a little tricky. Or also I can right click on the element that I want to change or the parameter. And right click and then select. There it goes. I'll key in 6 because we want that to be 6 feet away. So we have that. The next step is to change the island. Step 8 is change island radii to 4 feet. So what that means is we're changing these radii from 2 to 4, so we're going to key in 4. That changes that one down, and change this one, change that to 4, and also this corner one here, we'll change that from 2 feet, 4 data points. So we've changed the radiuses. The next step, this one can be tricky, so we'll go through it maybe a couple of different times in this video, is we need to adjust the island ingress offset -4 feet and the island egress 3 to -3 feet. So what that is this line, and you'll notice it's read only again. So we want to adjust this from -4 feet to -3. So I'll right click on the element. We want to set this to -3 and then verify that that is -2. I believe what we actually want to do is set this -6. And set this one to minus. We've changed the egress or the ingress and egress of this line from -4 feet to -6 or -2 feet to -6. Likewise down here it was -2. We set that to -3. The next step of this line, if I click back on it, is to take this handle and snap to this end of this radius, and then take this handle and snap to that radius. This one can be tricky too by grabbing handle, so we'll see what on that. So we're gonna grab this handle and move it to snap to this point. So now we've changed that egress or that snap point, that relationship, to be to that radius. We'll do the same thing on this bottom part. So we're gonna grab the handle and move that to snap to that point, which didn't take. So let me do Control Z. And then snap, and there we did it. So if you grab it by the circle, the handles, we're changing the snaps of these two to fit better in there, or fit the radius. So we're changing the snaps or changing the rules on this right turn island. So we move the offset handles to the radius points. The next step is to create a region and check the square footage of this. or the square feet, because in the design they have to be a certain square footage or square footage area. So to do that, we're going to find the create region tool. Again, if we didn't know where it was, we could take that in, but I know it's on the drawing workflow. So I'm going to change my workflow from Open Roads Modeling to drawing workflow. Go to the Home tab and then go to the Groups group and select create. If I didn't know, but I know the name, I can come up to the search ribbon in the top right, type or key that in, create region, it's the name of the tool. It'll tell me drawing workflow, home tab, the groups, and where else it is located. It's also in the Open Roads Modeling workflow, drawing tab, and the groups. So I will select that, click on the flood. I want to keep original, and I'll set my level to a scratch. So I'll click on the level and just type in S and then scroll down in and try and find the scratch level 1 or a scratch so I can change the color. So I'll do the scratch 1D because that's a drafting element that won't plot. Do that, I'll come back to the create region tool and select the flood data point inside the turning or the right turn island and accept. Then I'll go to my element selection tool and come back to my right turn island, trying to find the shape that we just did. So I'll right click, grab my complex shape, the B-spline curve that's on level scratch 1 underbar DP. Again, if I'm trying to find it, don't know where it is, I just right click and that will cycle through because there's two elements on top of each other. So right click once, I'll select it, and then I'll do Control I to bring up my properties. And I believe it is in the geometry tab. It will tell me my area right here. So I have 775.79 square feet. So I can check my FDM or design criteria to make sure that matches or that's the correct design criteria that I need. So that was exercise 2.12, placing the right turn island and adjusting it. So our next lines, we're going to go back to a tool that we used before. So I'll pin my property. So we're going to go back to our offsets and tapers. So we'll go back to the Open Roads Modeling Workflow, our Geometry tab, to our horizontal group, and go to Offsets and Tapers. We're going to do the tool Single Offset Partial, and we're going to place a couple of construction lines for our crosswalk lines off of baseline 98 for the intersection. So I need to set my feature definition since we're going to place a couple more construction lines. To do that, I'm going to go up to my match feature definition that can be found on the feature definition toolbar and select one of my construction lines. I'll do the green dash. That will become active. I don't want green dash. I'm going to go ahead and change that. So for this exercise, it doesn't matter, just so you guys can see the difference. I'm going to go ahead and choose construction lines blue dashed and then make that my active feature. So it's setting the tool up by this click, then I can just pick the tool that I want. So if I come back to my geometry tab, back to the horizontal group, go to my offsets and tapers, I'll pick single offset partial, and you'll notice that it's now using the active feature. So our first offset is going to be 52 or minus 52 feet away from the cross section, or baseline 98, I'm sorry. So I'm going to type in here 52 and then tab. That's going to lock it. This will be construction line for underbar or construction line A. So let me do a capital A. I'll put that in there in tab. And then I'm going to locate the element that I want it to pick from. That's going to be the baseline 98 or the US 98. And then I am going to go, so it's going to go 52 feet or minus 52 because I'm to the north. So I will snap that off of this line, and you'll notice the end distance I'll put right here, and it'll draw a construction line in that's 52 feet off. I don't want to mirror it, so I'll finish the tool and place that. So I've just placed my construction line 52 feet off there. So let me redo that because that blue is kind of hard to see. So I'm going to delete that construction line. I'm going to actually change my construction lines to a red dashed. So make that a little bit easier to see. So I'll go back up to my offsets and tapers from the horizontal group, do single offset partial. It still remembers my parameters, so 52, I'll name it construction line A and tab out. Select my baseline, select my radius, the start, you can see it's starting to place it. It'll draw it, and then I'll snap to my end. So it's just that simple to place. I don't want to mirror it, so I'll just add a point. So we've placed one line for the sidewalks. So our next step is using the same feature definition. We're going to draw just a line between points. So I'll go back to my horizontal group, to my line. I know this is line between points, but if I didn't know that, it was on another tool, I click on my split button and pick the line between points. It'll remember the last tool that. So this one will be construction line B. I'm going to tag that in and give that construction line B, key it in, and then tab. And this time I want to snap to the center of this radius. So I'm going to go to my snaps. Looks like I didn't have them up here. So to set those, I will go to File, Setting, or Toolboxes. And then I can go to the toolboxes another way. Since I know the name of the toolbox, it's snap mode. I can key it into the search and it'll bring it up, and then I can select it. It'll bring it up also, and then show all, and I will dock that up here. So I want to use my center snap, place that line, and then I'll use my key point snap since it's already defaulted to, and I will eyeball or snap my construction line B to the center of the right turn island. So I'll snap to the center of this radius and then snap to the center of this line on my right turn island. So we'll do construction line C, which will be a construction line based off of the State Road 61 to do this crosswalk over on this side. So again, I'll use the construction line dashed, go back to my horizontal group, offsets and tapers, single offset. In this case, we're not gonna do an offset, so I'll uncheck that. I'm gonna name this construction line C, and then key that in, so C, and then tab. Then I'll select my element. So we don't want an offset, so the parameter offset is going to be set. So we're just going to snap to the center of this radius, and then draw that line and snap to the center of this radius to build the other intersection. And then data point, and we're done with that tool. So we did construction line A for a cross sidewalk, construction line B for sidewalks, and construction line C for our sidewalks. So that takes us through exercise 2.13. Exercise 2.14, we're going to create the baseline 98 turnouts. And we can do that a couple different ways. We can use our civil cell technology for this guy, or for this turnout. This one, we're going to have to use more of our horizontal and our constraints that we learned. So first, let's go to the civil cell, or first let's do this one because this is not going to be a civil cell. So we need to place some edge of pavements and then radiuses. So to do that, we'll go to our first set of feature definition. So I'm going to go to the match feature definition, and I'll pick on any of my edge of pavement lines to match it, and then toggle on, toggle back off. So I'm going to go to my geometry tab, the horizontal group, offsets and tapers. I'll do the single offset entire element, and then this time I am going to toggle on the mirror because I want to place it once. So this will be our edge of pavement underbar, say turnout 1. Give that and then tab, so we give it a name. So our radius set to 20. So we'll set our offset to 20, not radius. Key that in 20. We'll toggle on the mirror because I don't want to have to do it twice. We'll do it in one step. So locate the alignment center line. Parameter is set for 20 feet. We do want to mirror it, so we just drew it both in there. So now the next step on this one is to place our arc so we can escape, or F6 to get out. We'll go to our arcs. We want to do arc between elements and a simple arc. We want to set that to trim and extend. Set the radius to 25. So we'll key that in, and then we'll give that a name of edge of pavement. This could be our arc underbar turnout. And this might not match the training guide completely, but we'll get that in there. So that'll be 1. We'll select our two elements that we want the radius to go between. That's this and this. And we want the trim, so that'll trim. We'll do the same thing over on this. I forgot the name, but that's okay. It would be the same EOPA underbar arc turnout, and we can change that later, or we can just key that in now. So this will be arc turnout 2 and tab. So we select our element 1 and 2, the edge of pavements, give it the direction where we want it to go, and then data point and place with the trim for that. So we just built that with what, 1, 2, 3 steps with 2 tools. This one is even easier because it has a center line and an edge of pavement. This can be done by a civil cell. So, or it can be done the same way. We could do the offset tapers on either side and then put an arc, but we have a civil cell for rural turnouts or side road turnouts. So we'll go back to our model detailing, the civil cells group, place civil cell, click on the ellipses to go to our 2D intersection and details degen live, and we'll do side road turnout. So there's a rural side road turnout. So it got renamed from side road turnout to rural side road turnout. So we'll pick that one as the detail. So we have 2 references on that, edge of pavement and center line. So we'll click OK. So it's asking our first reference, locate the reference element mainline edge of pavement. That will be this element. Second reference is the side road center line. That will be this. So this was drawn differently. So I'll change the direction again by locating the reference and then data pointing on. That didn't change it, so I'll come up and change the reference on, or the direction on the edge of pavement by left clicking. That sets it correct. Then I'll reset alternatives and then left click to, that's fine. This radius looks good. This radius needs to be smaller. So we'll go in and select, or back to our selection set. So 50, we'll change that to 25. And check on this 50, we can set that to 25 too. So that's changing the radius. It's skewed a little bit different, but it's creating that intelligence between. Exercise 215, baseline 98 intersection shoulders. This exercise used pavement asphalt EOPA to create 5-foot shoulder paved shoulder offset lines. We'll use the geometry tab in the horizontal group to select a single offset entire element to located in the offsets and tapers buttons. So we'll go to the geometry tab, the horizontal group. We'll use the offsets and tapers. We'll do single offset entire element. We'll set the offset to 5. And then in the feature definition, we'll go ahead and pick the shoulder paved P shoulder. If we don't know where that is, we'll go to the linear group, roadway design folder, plan and profile 2D lines, and then scroll down and find the shoulders folder and pick the feature definition of shoulder paved PSHL DER. Go ahead and select that. That'll set the tool up. So we'll pick the paved shoulder. That'll give us a name of PS. So we have the single offset entire element. Set the offset to 5 feet. We'll pick the shoulder paved PSH LDE or DR feature definition. That'll give us a name. I'm going to leave this as just how it is, so it'll increment. And then we'll come in and start laying out the paved shoulder. So the first element that we're going to select is turn lane to come into the school. So let's zoom in. We're going to pick this edge of pavement here on the right turn lane that's going into the school. So our first element, we'll pick this. We'll left click or pick the element, left click data point, and then left click data point, and we'll place that just like we've been doing with the other tools. Our next line will be the storage length edge of pavement. So we'll go ahead and select on that, and then left click data point and left click data point to work through the tool. Let's go ahead and do the curve or the radii. So we'll left click and data point on that, and then finish off with the school entrance line. Our next line will be on the other side that has the sidewalk. We'll give this a shoulder, and then we can follow out with on our lines. Let's do our entrances or side road turnouts by just left clicking, selecting an element, and then left clicking through the toolbar. Let's finish this. Left click, data point, and click through for the turnouts or the two side roads. And again, this will create the design intent between the edge of pavement lines and the paved shoulders. So if it changes, this will change with it. So we've created design intent and parent-child relationships. Let's go to the other side in the right turn lane, turning onto the new State Road 61. So we'll click on the storage length for a 5-foot shoulder, and then left click, working through the tool, and no for the parameters for mirror, and then fix our last line that we have in there. So that has lines. If we zoom in back over to where we started on our first line, we'll notice that there's a little cleanup that we need to do. The trim to intersection, or do the trim and those tools. So let me hit escape or F6 to get out of the current and take me back to the element selection. I'll go to the drawing tab and to the modify group, and then the trim to intersection tool, and use that. So I will pick the two paved shoulders that I just placed off my edge of pavements. So I'll pick this one and trim it to this, and then I'm going to go up and switch my tool on the modify group to the trim to element. And I want to trim this back to the pavement milling, or I'd have another shoulder off of this side. Let's do that same thing on this other edge. So I'll go back to the modify, back to the trim to intersection tool, and trim these to each other. We want to do a paved shoulder, so let's go back and do that one real quick, and then we'll clean that up. So I'll go back to the geometry tab, horizontal group, offsets and tapers, single offset entire element. It still remembers that we're doing paved shoulder, so I don't have to select the feature definition. So I will select on my zoom in and my edge of pavement, and then left click data point and left click data point to work through the tool. Again, I'll hit F6 or the escape key to exit out, and then there's more cleanup that we need to do, so we can come back to the drawing tab, the modify group, and the trim to intersection. Click on those. So that's placing paved shoulder with the geometry tab, the horizontal group, and the offsets and tapers, single offset entire element, and then using the drawing tab and the modify group and the two intersection trim tools, trim to intersection and trim to element tools to do the cleanup. That will take us to exercise 216, the Friendship Road intersection. So let's zoom out and zoom up to the two Friendship Road. So we have Friendship, and then this alignment is Friendship 2. So to build that, we're going to go back to the civil cells that can be found in the model detailing. We'll go to the civil cells group and place civil cell. That'll bring up the dialog, and it will remember the last civil cell that we placed. So we'll click on the ellipses, and that should bring up our dialog. To go back, we're going to go into the FDOT2D intersection underbar details DGN-Lime. We'll click on the plus, and we want to pick on the civil cell for the rural side road turnout and place a couple more turnouts to build this intersection. We'll click OK on that once we have that rural side road turnout picked. And then following the prompts, it's asking us to locate the reference. The first reference will be the mainline edge of pavement. So we'll pick the edge of pavement off our main line, and then the side road center line. So we'll pick the center line of the Friendship. Looks like it came in correctly, so I can reset by right clicking and then left click data point to accept the placement of that civil cell. It's still in the tool, so let's go to the other Friendship and pick that. So zoom out, pick our edge of pavement, and next to the center line. And this one, how the civil cell was drawn is different than the lines that we have placed. So to fix that, we'll come and just hover over the references to bring up the arrow, and then left click data point to change the direction. That one did not do it. So this one had two references, so we'll go back over to the edge of pavement and see if we can get it correct to get placed correctly, and we'll hover over the edge of pavement, which is our second reference, and then left click and data point on that, and that does change the direction. So once it looks correct again, we can right click to reset and then left click data point to place. And then I'm going to escape or F6 to get out of the tool. And then, so the civil cell is placed on both sides. We'll use the trim commands in the drawing tab to modify group to clean the extra curb line and sidewalk. So we're going to clean these sidewalk lines and the curb lines to be trimmed to this line. And then also these sidewalks and curb lines will be trimmed to this. So let's go to the drawing tab, the modify group, and the trim to element tool. So we'll click those to trim the sidewalk back to the edge of pavement and sidewalk front to the edge of pavement. Zoom in and we'll get the curb back to the edge of pavement and also the curb face on this side. So that'll clean that up. We'll do the same thing on our left hand side. We'll get our curb lines and trim them, curb back, our curb face, sidewalk front, and sidewalk back. The next step is to change radii of the curbs. So this is friendship 2. Those will be 20 feet. But let's go over to our friendship 1 or the friendship. I'll go to my element select tool. We're going to change the radius from 50 to 35. And then watch on this, we have design intent and intelligence built in to these trims or these intervals. So if I change this radius to 35, it remembers the trims. So the intervals come with it, so it's intelligent. Here's a straight line. I'll just go ahead and delete that. And let's do the same thing on this other side for the friendship 2, but instead of 35, we're going to make those a 20-foot radius. So I'll click on the edge of pavement. I'll come to the manipulator settings and change it from 50 to 20. So that's placing the rural turnout and do trim. The next step is to go back to the model detailing tab. We'll go back to the civil cells group and place civil cell. We're going to then click on the ellipses. We'll go back into the FDOT2D intersection underbar details DGen Lib. So we'll click that plus. And we're going to pick the left turn with traffic separator. So we have that selected. We'll notice the references and our shape that we're going to place. So we'll click OK. That will take us into the tool. And then following the prompts, it's locate the element Sideroad centerline. That will be the friendship. And then the second reference is the left median edge of pavement. That will be this element off of our main. And if I zoom out and zoom back in, you'll notice that this one gets placed. And to change that, I'm just going to change the direction. So you'll notice that the nose is right down here instead of up there. So let me go ahead and change the direction of the references. So left click and data point. That'll put it the median on the other side. So let me change that back, and now we'll notice that that nose is correctly placed. And we have the turning radius coming into the friendship. So that looks correct. So I will right click and then left click data point to accept. And then I'm going to escape and F6 to bring back to the element selection. And we will go back to our trim tools on the drawing tab. But first, we'll set the turning radius. So we'll click on this construction line. We're going to set it from 100 to 50. And then we'll go in and trim our edge of pavement and these curb back and curb face to this construction line here. So we'll go to the drawing tab, the modify group, and trim to element. and select on the edge of pavement. Trim that to this construction line as well as the curb face and the curb back elements. So we'll notice now that all these lines are trimmed to that construction. Here's our storage length. We'll change that in a second, but let's go and fix this other side. So we'll go to the modify group on the ribbon and then the trim to intersection. And again, we'll trim these curb back to this curb back and then curb face to curb face and our edge of pavement line to our edge of pavement line, the taper. And now that looks more like a intersection in a turn lane. The next step is to change the storage length from 200 to 300. If we do that, then we notice that this does not change. That is because it's on a radius. That is something, but we built this trim section in a matter of 30 seconds by using the civil cells. And with the civil cells, we've created the design intent into this group or into the design. So if our alignment changes, all of our edge of pavement lines and our civil cells that we've placed will change with it. So let's finish it out as a bonus exercise with some of the tools that we've learned. The bonus exercise is we're going to add curb lines and edge of pavement lines using the taper and a shoulder. So let's turn that on, but before we do that, let's go back to our view attribute. We're going to turn on the background map. So I'm going to go back and select the hybrid. And that can be a little bit tricky sometimes, that you may have to go do it once or twice, and check it. But that will give us a map and a hybrid like we showed before of how this intersection is designing or being laid out. So we're going to add a edge of pavement line with a taper tool to finish this out and make this look a little bit better and tie our new design into the existing roadway. So we'll go back to the geometry tools, the horizontal group. I'm going to use offsets and tapers. I'm going to use a variable offset. It will remember that with this tool we use the pavement asphalt. If I didn't, I can come up here and match feature definition. So if I click on this, then I just locate the feature definition that I want it to match. So if I want to match feature definition, you'll notice that that will display up here in this toolbar. And then I can just toggle this on because we're going to place a few edge of pavement lines to finish this out. If I have it set here, then I don't have to set the tool. So if I go back to the variable offset taper, you'll notice that this is use the active feature, which is set up here by toggling this on. If I toggle this on, then I have to set the feature definition in the tool. So I'm going to come back up and toggle it on to use the active feature definition. And then from here, it's asking me to locate the element that I want to pick from. That's going to be the center line of the new State Road 61 that we designed. So I'll click on that. And then I will snap to my edge of pavement line from my existing design. And then scroll out or zoom out and then zoom back in. And I want to tie this edge of pavement line, just kind of match into this. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I can actually go past, tie it in. So let me go zoom out, zoom back in, just kind of eyeball that line right in there. I don't want to mirror it, so I'll just left click and data point through. So I've laid out my left hand side. Let's do that for our right. So again, I'll click the new State Road 61 that we designed as my element to pick from. I'll snap to my edge of pavement, and then this one I'm going to follow kind of this background or this element here, or this curb line or the edge of pavement line to mirror that. And I'm going to actually stop it here to tie in. I was just eyeballing it. You guys can do whatever you want. It's just finishing off. This is just kind of what I'm doing to show you some more of the tools. And then left click data point through. The last one I'm going to use still in the same tool, the variable offset. And again, I'll pick from the center line and snap, and then just kind of eyeball this in this direction. And I'm not worried about snapping to anything. I'll just lay that out and then left click and data point. So the reason I wasn't worried about that, so let me escape and F6, and then I'll turn my background off, the map. So let me switch back to none. The element selection. We have an overlap, but we don't want that overlap. We want it to tie back into this existing. So I can come back to my drawing tab, and then my modify group and trim to element, and select the new pavement line that we've created, and have that tie in and create an interval to my existing pavement. So the tie back, I'll do that on my northbound and also the southbound. So we have that. So let's put some shoulder and curves or shoulder lines on to finish this detail out. So let's go back to the geometry. We'll come in and do our single offset entire element. This time we do want to turn off the use a feature, and this time I'm going to set it from the tool. So let me go back to the linear group, roadway design, planar profile 2D lines, and this time I'm going to go into the shoulders category, pick the shoulder paved. And again, I will come in and just start picking my edge of pavements. So I'll place a shoulder here, place one here. And sorry I'm going fast, so I'm just using the same tool, and then left click and place. Let's do the same thing on this other side and build this. So it's just pick the element that you want to offset it from, the entire element, and then we can just build. So it's just that simple to build a intersection or a finish our design with the design intent. And then it's just coming in after we have those and use our drawing tab, our modify group, and our trim to intersection tools to clear that out. And so that cleans that one of that. So that's finishing out our tapers, putting the tapers on there using that design intent with this information. So that takes us to the end of Chapter 2, 2D Planimetric. So, thank you for joining me today for the CAD Office series for FDOTConnect. This was Chapter 2, Part 2 of the 2D Planimetrics.